joined with Amir and Anna. And today we have our very special guests, Nir and Sefi from Sipur or Hikaya. If you don't know Arabic or Hebrew, Sipur or Hikaya means story. And they have a beautiful story. They believe that an important step to peace is that both people in both nations have to believe in peace and have to basically push their leaders to basically appreciate peace and build a bridge that will take us further in this basically most important mission of humanity until now, I believe, if you know what I mean. So I'm very excited to have you guys. Why don't you start introducing yourself? Nir, Sefi, please go ahead.
Sefi, you can go first.
Lovely, I'll do it. I'll give you a long description, hopefully interesting. So good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are located now. Happy to see you all, to be with you. I'm Sefi Donner. I'm the entrepreneur behind Sipur-Hikaya. Story, two stories, two narratives. That's the name of the NGO. And the story is the following. So it's I'm a businessman. I'm 61 years old. Recently, I became a grandfather, and I'm still working.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And working hard in business, but this business is selling tickets for sports events and shows around the world. Mm-hmm. And we employed 45 people prior to the corona. Quite a few of them were Arabs living in Israel, and we had also a lot of customers, Arab customers, not only from Nazareth or Taibe, but also from Ramallah or East Jerusalem, and also from Beirut and from Baghdad and from all the Gulf countries. And at a certain moment, I said to myself, come on, I want to do something about promoting or bringing peace to the Middle East, to try and solve the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And I decided, although I'm managing a company of 40 plus people, I will devote some of my time for this mission. And the next step was starting to think, okay, what's the way to move? What's the way to move forward? How can I be effective? And at a certain moment, I decided, or I came to the conclusion after reading quite a few books about the conflict and some biographies, that the main problem or major problem is that ignorance. There is a lot of ignorance. Many Israelis, they don't know what's behind, what's going on in the heads of the Palestinians, and the Palestinians don't know what's going on in the heads of the Israelis. There is a lot of ignorance, and that's something to do also with the educational system in both territories. And with this knowledge, I started looking for a solution, and the next step was that I found a book that was written approximately, they finished writing it 13 years ago, a book describing the two narratives. It's an initiative that was created by two professors. One was the professor for psychology, the other one was professor for education. One is Israeli, one is Palestinian. And they decided that time has come. It was a little bit after the Oslo Agreement. The idea was that we are hopefully moving towards peace. And they thought that it would be a good thing to try and write a history book that will be more neutral, that will be fair, showing two sides. And hopefully this could be the book that the high school pupils will study in both territories. So they started bringing together historians, and each historian brought some history teachers, some Israelis, some Palestinians. And then the second intifada, the uprising started. It was the year 2000. And at that time, it was clear that writing a book with one story, one narrative, perhaps with a few perspectives, but one narrative is very difficult. So they decided, okay, we are still interested to move forward. Let's write two narratives in one book, side by side, the Israeli narrative and the Palestinian narrative in one book. And the idea was that, okay, two narratives, but to try and make them slightly moderate, but still, different. But with these two narratives, hopefully you can bring it to schools and you can try and start giving lessons with this book to the pupils. So they brought together those teachers, and mainly in the summer vacations, those teachers were meeting. And after 7-8 years of hard work, they were ready in 2009 or 2008 perhaps with a book showing two narratives and trying to give the pupil the opportunity to try and understand what
Sounds like
happened.
a hard book to write.
Yeah, not easy. And the next step was that they were just kicked out, both from the Minister of Education in Israel and the educational system in the Palestinian Authority. So
Almost
that's
like they don't want peace. Almost like both those bodies don't want peace.
yes, the idea is that when you educate the high school pupils, you want them to learn just your narrative, so they are fully motivated to go to the army. And that is the vision of the educational managers of the education, the managers of both systems. They want
That's true.
pupils to be fully committed to the nation ideas, the nation
Yeah, I studied
vision.
with Palestinian schools, and I know what you mean. Like they don't teach the other narrative at all, almost.
Yeah, and the same in Israel. Believe me, the same in Israel. So after some time, when it was clear that they cannot enter, the money from the European Union stopped because there was no implementation. And basically, this organization called Prime not exactly shut the doors, but they hardly did anything. They were just selling some books in Hebrew, Arabic, and English, but not more than that. So when I came a couple of years ago to Professor Eyal Naveh in Tel Aviv, he is the historian that was monitoring the work and escorting the Israeli history teachers. He told me, listen, we are not doing too much, but if you want to do something, please go ahead. So we went to meet Sami Adwan, which is the professor from Vijala, from Bethlehem. And he told us, listen, I had enough already with the BDS. I'd rather not cooperate with you. Go ahead if you want to, but without me. So the next step was to meet in Tel Aviv with the history teachers, the Israeli history teachers. And I introduced myself and I told them, listen, I'm managing a company. I'm not a history teacher. I'm not from the educational field. I'm not a psychologist or so, but I know something about management, something about social media, about PR, managing people, raising funds. If you want, I'm happy to lead. So they said, fine. If you're interested to lead an entity in Israel, establish it, we are behind you. So that's what I did. I established Sipur-Hikaya, and with me, I'm the chairman, and right now I'm the one who's financing it. Not so easy, but still I'm okay. And the Professor Naveh, he is the president, and the other history teachers that wrote the book, they are members of this NGO. And that's when we started, that's how we started. So it was a bit slow. The first 2-3 years, I started studying how to raise funds, and a little bit went to some peace meetings with peace organizations to meet some other peacemakers. And I was very occupied. I was occupied a lot with my job. And then the Corona came, and my business of selling tickets for sports events and shows was damaged very much. I mean, severely damaged. We lost all our turnover. Not only that we lost 100% of the turnover, but we also needed to give back money, refund people money for all the orders we received prior to the Corona. So we had a lot of difficulties, and I had to fight. However, the company is still alive, but what's more important, I had time. For a year and 2 months, we didn't sell anything. So I had time for the NGO. So that's where I started moving faster with the NGO, building a website, 3 languages, opening a bank account, and going further with the Facebook page. So it was October 1, 11 months ago, almost 11 months ago, when we launched the activity, with all the WhatsApp groups and with Facebook posts and we started, trying to make a buzz. And since then, we are moving forward quite nicely. Before I continue describing what we did in the last year, I want just to clarify. The idea of our NGO, the vision is that we hope that thousands and tens of thousands of the Israelis, and also in parallel, tens of thousands of Palestinians will study the complexity of this conflict, the fact that there is more than one narrative, and especially the other side's narrative. It's very important. And hopefully, when there are tens of thousands on each side that know something about the complexity of this conflict, know something about the what's behind the head of the other side, hopefully we will start showing empathy to each other, and then we will start pushing the leaders. That's the idea, to hopefully to form a big power, a mass of many people that will start pushing their leaders to move towards peace. Hopefully, we need to have what we call warm peace. We can't have between Israel and Palestinian. It has to be a warm peace with good relations, hopefully open borders, because we are scattered together. We have so many things. We have the holy places, and we have the settlers, hundreds of thousands of settlers, and we have the Palestinians living in Israel. So many problems that you really need to have warm peace. You cannot have a cold peace like you have with Egypt or with Jordan. We have cold peace with Egypt and Jordan. That's okay. They are our neighbors. We have a fence. But to create a fence with the Palestinians, it's almost impossible. So we need to create a warm peace. And a warm peace, you have to go through a process of reconciliation. And for reconciliation, you need to study. You need to learn what's behind the head, what's in their head of the enemy, of the other side. Only then you can really make a stable reconciliation, and then hopefully the path for peace, for a sustainable peace, is open. So that's our vision. And since October 1, we are moving forward. We started creating all kind of Zoom. The Zoom is a very good way, or Zoom or YouTube, whatever. But right now it's possible to bring
online
a lot of people online, and we started creating Zoom meetings with a few meetings just to introduce our entity to some members of other peace organizations, such as Women Wage Peace, or some other organizations from the Galilee, a friend of mine from those entities. And the next step was to start bringing some professors and some other people to lectures. So we brought some professors to give some lectures about how we can move to peace, what are the obstacles. And we brought the Palestinian Authority with the interaction committee of the Palestinian Authority. There is an interaction committee to have interaction with the Israeli society. So we brought two people to speak and describe the Palestinian narrative. So we made, so far, we created, I think we had about 12 or 14 Zoom meetings, sometimes with 40 people, sometimes with 180 people, and usually it was videoed, and later on we have a recording, and some 100 or 200 additional people saw it. And we are trying to build a community. We are right now about 800 people in the community. I mean, people that listed themselves to receive newsletters, and they are happy to receive more newsletters and to come and to join meetings. In 4 weeks, 4 weeks from now, we are also going. Finally, we will meet in the field. We are going to Gush Etzion. It's a Beit Lechem area to meet Shorashim, Roots. It's a very interesting organization.
Is it? I know them. I heard about them.
Yeah, so Roots, very great people, settlers with Palestinians, neighboring Palestinians. They are sitting together, discussing, having a dialogue, and it's a very successful organization. They bring people to listen to what they are doing, and they are really trying to change the atmosphere, and they are trying to copy it and to have the same organization in the Jordan Valley and in other places. So we are going to meet them. We're also going to see a village, Khirbet Zakaria, in C, in area C, where the Israelis are controlling both security issues and civilian issues, and the people there are really,
You should really come to Har Gerizim, Sefi, because it's a perfect place for Palestinians and Israelis. It's A and C, which is actually B. It's a B. So
it's a B. Okay, we'll come. I promise, Abud. I promise we will do it. So our next trip is to Gush Etzion, next to Bethlehem, but I'm sure we will do more. So that's one thing. We are, one channel of what we are doing is to have our presence in the social media. We upload posts all the time, and we arrange Zoom meetings, and once in a while we go also to the field. But that's one channel. The other channel is to try and do more substantial things. And right now we are working on first project, which is building a program to the 10th grade, Kita Yud, 10th grade in high school. There is an opportunity there. The Ministry of Education has decided that 2 hours a week are devoted to what we call general knowledge, meaning go and study everything, nothing for the matriculation tests or so. So some people study a little bit financing education, music, some science if it's not a science class, etc. And we are building now a program of conflicts and resolutions, teaching about some conflicts that were solved, like in Ireland, South Africa. Usually when you want to give people the idea that, first discuss a conflict that is far away. It's easier for the people to digest that you have two sides and they have their narrative. So it's always
we've actually discussed the Irish conflict a lot on there, because on the podcast, because it's actually a great example of a conflict that lasted for so long and was ended abruptly. It's not all perfect now in Ireland. I lived there for a couple of years. It's not all perfect, but it works. And what we need over here is a solution that is going to work for the long term, and something that can get us out of these cycles of violence that every few years they just make things worse and worse, basically. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine. So back to the program. So first we will teach about a few conflicts in other countries, and then we are going to teach about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, trying to show not only the Israeli narrative, but also to show the Palestinian side, and then to start and describe some options for a solution, different solutions, 2 states, 1 state, etc. And then after discussing solutions, we want to inform them to describe all the peace organizations that are in the field, that are working and active. So the youth will realize that there are so many people struggling and working and believing that there is a chance for peace. So the idea is that at the end of this year, the high school guy in Israel will realize that peace is something that you can think that is possible. You don't need to say to yourself, there is no chance. Because one of our major problems is that people just, they decided that there is no chance for peace, and we just need to manage the conflict. That's what people nowadays say. We need to manage the conflict because there is no way to solve it. So we are trying to convince the high school people, youth, that there is a chance. There is a chance, and there are thousands of people, perhaps tens of thousands of people that are spending some time.
I like that you focused on education, though, Sefi.
Yes.
Education
and that's the age. That's the age when people are still open to listen and to change their mind and to think about new ideas, etc. So that's one project that we are working. And luckily, although we don't have the resources, we have a few teachers that are working on volunteering now in the summer to create this program. That's one project that is already moving forward. The other projects that are waiting for budgets, that we do need money, and we are trying to raise funds for our organization. One of them is reconciliation through celebrities. The idea is to contact some tens of celebrities here in Israel, some of them Jews, some of them Arabs, maybe sportsmen, some singers, some other influencers, and to bring them, free or four in small groups, and to give them a 1 hour explanation about the complexity of this conflict and about the idea that there is more than one narrative, and hopefully to convince each one of them to go out and speak to his followers, in Instagram and Facebook, whatsoever, and say, hey, go and study about the two narratives, go and study about the roots of the conflict, go and study about how complex it is, etc. So hopefully they will bring 2,000-3,000 people, some of them Jews, some of them Arabs, to go and study for a workshop of about 4 or 5 meetings of an hour and a half. This is a must that is hopefully strong enough or powerful enough to change ideas. So hopefully we will bring people to seminars of 4 or 5 meetings. Some of them will be uninational, some of them will be binational, because the good teaching, the good work can be done when you are just Jews or just Arabs. When you bring Jews and Arabs together, if they are not well educated in advance, you cannot create too much good, because they start, just screaming at each other, blaming each other, etc.
Don't you think it happens at a younger age, even third grade, fourth grade, right? Because that's what I remember when I was in second grade, first grade. Even I remember the teacher was teaching the students. I'm not saying whether what she said was right or wrong, but it obviously made the children like hate Israelis. I was at the Palestinians, so
I remember looking at the map. They showed us the map in the second grade. You see the entire land from the river to the sea, and the teacher says, "This is Israel." And then 10, 15 years later, you understand that's not exactly the case.
Yeah.
Well, even if you go back to biblical times, there were different kingdoms. There was Israel, there was Judea. The borders in this whole Middle East have always been very, very fluid throughout the history. And borders, in fact, are a new thing. Sykes-Picot, during the Ottoman Empire, people traveled freely. Everything was open. So I guess it's getting used to a new Middle East. It's been hard for the citizens all around.
My story is very, very simple when I think about it. First of all, it's my second time here, so it's good to see you back again.
It's great to have you back, man.
Yeah. I grew up on Rabin's assassination and on the Second Intifada and the wars. When I got drafted in the beginning of the Second Lebanon War, and Cast led all those operations. But something changed 3 years ago when I became a father, and when I became a father, that's the first time I said, okay, we have to end this conflict, because I don't want her to grow on my daughter Michal to grow on the things that I grew up on. I said it last time, and I say it again. So Sefi was my employer, still is my employer at Sport Events 365, where I'm the head of marketing, and it seems very natural that I'll join him in Sipur-Hikaya as the head of digital activities. So that's what I'm doing now as a volunteer. And just like you, we believe in peace in the grassroots level. First of all, in the grassroots level, where the society will be ready for peace, and will accept and will see peace as a viable option. And moreover than that, I think the most important thing is that the society from both sides will realize how similar we are, that we are cousins, and it is achievable. We can do it. So I'm happy
Hard to see for
to.
many people.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's hard to see. For many people, it's hard to see that. So maybe
The
it's our mission
resemblance.
to
Yeah,
clarify.
it's hard to see. It's hard to see the resemblance, but it's so visible. So when
True.
you start to build the connection slowly, step by step, you start to realize how similar we are, and I believe we can get there. And the education process is something that Sipur-Hikaya is focused on, but we do try to collaborate with other NGOs and with other groups that work on a different level, and hopefully we'll do it.
So
We yeah.
I have to ask you guys, since you spent so much time trying to learn about the Palestinian narrative, is there anything that you read when you were doing Sipur-Hikaya that shocked you, or that you didn't know, just being an Israeli and not hearing that side?
Well, when I read the Palestinian narrative in the book, there were quite a few stories that I said to myself, "Wow, that's what the Palestinians know." For example, when we try to understand how did everything start. So our history, the Zionism, starts from about 1880, where the first newcomers came to Israel and started rebuilding the state. That's where we believe everything started. And later on, Herzl came and said, "Hey, we must work hard to have our state here. We must convince the superpowers." And he started going to meet all the big chiefs, etc., or in Istanbul and in other places. So that's what we know about history. But according to the Palestinian narrative, it's not the Zionism, it's the empires, it's the Brits and the French. They decided that they want to have a non-Muslim entity here. So they decided, let's bring the Jews here. Napoleon was the first one to offer the Jews to help him conquer Acre. And he said, if you help me conquer Acre, it was 1799 when he came here, I will build the temple back. I will rebuild the temple for you. So it was his initiative. And then Palmerston, the Lord Palmerston, 1859, had some ideas. So basically, the Palestinian narrative says we are colonialists, and it's not even our initiative. It was the initiative of the empires at the time, the French and the Brits. It was their initiative to bring us here. That was a shock for me to read. I said, wow, that's the history that they know, that someone brought us here to be a non-Muslim entity in this area in the Middle East. And that was shocking. Of course, there are more stories about how things happened in 1921 or 1929. Everybody saw, the Brits, for example. We know that the Brits, we learned that the Brits, they were here for 30 years, the British mandate. And we heard that in many moments they were quite anti-Israelis. They didn't help us build our state. They didn't allow us to bring immigrants as much as we wanted. It was very difficult to immigrate to Israel in the 20s, in the 30s, especially in the late 30s before the Second World War. A lot of Jews wanted to come here, and the Brits did not allow them to come. But the Palestinians believe that the Brits helped us a lot, and with their help, we managed to build our state, etc., etc. So it's really, when you read the books, you say, wow, what a difference.
Yeah.
And that's part of reconciliation, listening to the other one's stories. You don't need to accept it, but you have to understand that that's what he has in mind. So if you want to reconcile it with him, if you want to start a good process, let's listen, let's speak. I want him to learn my story, and I will listen to his story. And of course, there are a lot of personal stories, about 48. There's so many Palestinians describing how they had to leave their house, or perhaps they had to run away. And one thing is clear, they couldn't come back. This is something I really learned. Not only
Or they went to refugee camps, yeah.
they had to leave the country, and then at the end of 48, some of them came back and tried to come back to their homes, but they were not allowed to. In Jaffo, in Lud, in Ramle, they were not allowed to come back. And in addition, something that I learned recently, that there are so many refugees in Israel, Israeli citizens, Palestinian Arabs living in Israel. Maybe he lives in al-Fahim, but he's a refugee from Jaffa or things like that. So it's
Right.
inside the territory, you have a lot of refugees.
I can tell you, as a 3-year-old Israeli, that up until 1 or 2 years ago, I never heard the word Nakba. I didn't know what it was. They never teach it. It's a taboo in Israeli society, and the Palestinian narrative it's a basic thing in the Palestinian narrative. So I think Israelis must at least know about it.
They don't know enough. That's true. They don't really.
They don't know enough. They don't know enough, and the other side doesn't know enough as well. So this is what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
People get the wrong idea. You don't have to accept what the other narrative is. You just have to see what they believe and understand their feelings and where their emotions are coming from. You can start
at least learn about it, know it, read the story, hear the story.
Because when you, for example, a lot of Israelis, I think they underestimate how much the Palestinians love their land. You know, they genuinely love their land, and you cannot deny that. And when you do understand, you can understand why are they, for example, maybe acting in some ways that you might think is against you in many ways, you know. So
yeah, just a quick update, everyone. Amir had Wi-Fi problems, so that's why he's not here with us. Yeah, so we'll see if he can come back, but he might not be able to.
Right. And we have a question from Daniel here. Did we read this one? Is there a solution? Is there a situation where you relate to the Palestinians, but the conflict prevents you to admit?
I'm happy to see Daniel here. He was with me in the last episode. You wanna take this one, Sefi?
I need to read it again.
There you go.
Is there a situation where you relate to the Palestinians, but the conflict prevents you to admit?
When I read this question, like just a small note, I do relate with the Palestinians, for example, when I go to the sea, for example, because I know Palestinians in the West Bank don't have that easy of an access to the sea. And I had a friend who went to see the sea for the first time in her life. She's 25, but she saw the sea for the first time in her life. So I can, you know, just a small example. I think that touches on that question a little bit.
Mm-hmm. For me, I'll say that weirdly enough, something I relate to Palestinians is the narrative of you know, for me it's my grandparents being refugees and my mom too. And the narrative of constantly moving around. It's so funny. Like I would go to Palestinian, like listen to Palestinian stories, and they would be like, we had to pack up our suitcases and leave, and we couldn't take anything with us. And you know, and we never came back, and our lives were turned upside down overnight. And that's actually the same story I hear from my grandparents about Iraq, and from my mom about Iran. So in that sense, actually, you know, and I can never go back to those places, just like they can't go back to their homes. So in that way, I actually think there's a lot of parallels.
I think for me, the most difficult time where I do want to relate to the Palestinians, but my past kind of prevents me, is the whole situation with the IDF oppression. Because I can't deny that there is a situation of oppression in the West Bank. But my history as a soldier, as a former member of the IDF, it's very, very hard for me to say, yeah, there's oppression. It's very hard for me to admit it, like Daniel asked. But at the end of the day, I think it's important to realize it. I think it's important to admit that there is a problem, and it can be fixed. We can create. Even if there is occupation doesn't necessarily have to mean oppression. I think it can be. We can do a lot more to help the other side, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in the Zone C, especially, Israel is very, very tough and very unfair to the Palestinians. It's not the way to bring reconciliation. The way we don't allow them to build. We never give them approvals to build. So everything they build is uh, is not legal, because when you don't give people the right to build anything, so they start building without permission. That's an example of how we act in Zone C. Yeah, there is a lot to improve in the way we behave. We are the strong part, and we need to be much fair and much gentle. And in a way, we need to be the ones who make the first step. And of course, we want things to happen also on the other side. I mean, that you need to look. We are looking for something mutual. You are not. It's not that only the Israelis should be flexible and should give up here and give up there. We need to move parallelly. Both sides should move in parallel. But the Israelis need to take more measurements and more steps, and we can afford to be more generous than we are.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I
Well,
think it's a
grew up-
question of
It's a long
responsibility.
Sorry.
I said it's a question of responsibility. I think we have more responsibility right now because we have more power. The other side has some responsibility as well, but we have more, I think.
I tend to agree. Yeah.
I see what you mean. Well, I grew up really in Shechem, in Nablus, pretty much all my life. My friends are like, basically most of them are from Nablus because it's really close. It's 5 minutes and I'm from Nablus. And 4 weeks ago, actually, I went with some Americans to Nablus, and they went to ask Palestinians questions there. It was a really intense experience for them. First time in Nablus, and they were with cameras, so eyes were on them. And they were surprised how the Palestinians, you go to Nablus, you think about Nablus, and all you get before you go there is what the media might show you. And usually it's not a very peaceful thing, unfortunately, if you know what I mean, about Nablus, and at least about Nablus. So what I'm trying to say is that people really don't see a lot of the good things. They're missing a lot of the good things, the good people. Even that if you go to Nablus, you're not necessarily in danger. If you're an Israeli, it's not really like that. I mean, there are some places that might be more dangerous than others, but
It's crazy because they have signs, the Area A signs. They always say danger to your lives if you are an Israeli.
Even into GPS, when I use Waze or any kind of GPS, and I choose I choose a route that goes through a Palestinian city, they send me a warning, like, "Oh, warning, you're going into a dangerous zone." I was like, "Whoa, okay." It makes you feel weird because I go there and I have an Israeli car. I mean, Israeli licensed car. I've never had any problems.
Wow.
But then again, I understand what people go through. So, I mean, what people might think. We have a street that comes to Nablus now, that's called Hawara Village. So they go through Hawara Village, and it's basically a street that Palestinian and Israelis use. But what they're doing now, what the Israeli government is doing now, they're going to make another street for only Israeli-only cars. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's going to be a strict Palestinian only and Israeli only or something like that. But just hope it doesn't cause more discrimination, if you know what I mean, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yes.
what we're facing these days in some places. So yeah. All right. So what do you think? What would be the biggest obstacle for peace these days? Is it education? Is it people? Is it media? Is it religion?
It's a combination, you need to change the atmosphere. You need to create, for example, the media. Right now, the media is not so much interested to write and to introduce peacemakers, to write about peace, to show peace organizations. It's not so interesting. It doesn't give rating. So we need to start, moving the wheels to the other direction. So the media will start showing interest in peace activities, and bringing the camera to see peace demonstrations and peace meetings, all kind of conferences, etc. In both territories, we need, of course, the people in the Palestinian side to be more comfortable, to be more secured, that they can start moving towards peace, because in some territories the Palestinian Authority doesn't allow peace activists in Nablus or so to start, moving and going through.
It can be dangerous to your life in some places.
There is always a risk that the Mukhabarat will call you, investigate you, arrest you, and tell you, hey, you are not allowed to. Yeah, it's normalization. It's normalization. So we need, of course, to make a change where the Palestinians will enable the peace activists in their side to move forward, to be active, to start making noise. Because I believe that when more and more Israelis will realize that they are peace activists in the other side, they will feel more comfortable to start encouraging and moving forward in their side. So it has to be mutual. When the one side realizes that the other side is starting to move in the good direction, you have more motivation to move in your side. So we need to hope. We should hope that the movements will happen simultaneously. That's very important. Although I know that for the Palestinians it's more difficult. They suffer. They are under occupation. I know that it's more difficult for them, but yet we still hope that they can somehow move, perhaps slower, but let them also move. It will help us motivate our people, convince our people to move forward with us and to join us to the peace flow, to the peace process, to the peace movement, because we really want always to increase, to enlarge the circle, to bring more and more people to the peace system, to the peace, to the echo. A lot of people, they are just not interested. I have some friends. I can sit with my friends, and they hardly ask me about my NGO. They ask me about my business, about my family, etc. But my NGO is not interesting for them, which is a shame. And I want them to be interested.
Basically, so like even if you go to YouTube or these kind of things, usually peace videos and politics and all these things, they get less views. I mean, there's less kind of maybe intense emotions around them or something like that. But people do underestimate how can this change the world 100%. I think so many people underestimate how much like many Palestinians want peace. I grew up with them, so many Palestinians want peace, but they just can't openly talk about it. And even if they get a picture with a peace activist from Israel or something like that, their face has to be blurred. It's to that extent. And maybe we're at the early stages. Maybe soon things get easier. I hope so. Yeah,
we have to believe.
We have to believe, and we need to be optimistic. We need to push. We need to try and bring more people with us, and we need to be patient. That's very important. I always say we are not running fast. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Yeah.
We are running slowly, but we are moving forward all the time, and we should be persistent. We should be fully motivated, understanding that it's a long process. Someone told me, oh, you are not peace now, you are peace later. You are not shalom achshav, you are shalom achar kach. Yes, we believe in the long term. We are not expecting peace to happen tomorrow. It's a long process, a lot of education, a lot of convincing people. It's a lot of work that has to be done in order to create a reality that can change, to change reality.
So I have a question. We talked a bit about the Palestinian freedom of movement and how we need that in the land. But obviously, the counter argument from the Israeli side was that we had so many safety issues, and there was the Intifada, and so what do we do? Like, how do we get over, as Israelis? How would we get over that? Like, get over the memories of the Intifada and the fear that caused?
Yeah, that's one of the challenges, because when I speak with people who are willing to discuss things with me, as I said, some people, they don't care, but some people tell me, listen, they want to kill us. Did you forget all the buses? Did you forget all this and that? And those people, they are willing to fight with me and to shout at me and to scream and criticize me and tell me how naive I am. And I tell them, listen, we can always find Jews that hate the Arabs and some Jews, terrorist Jews, and we can always find those Arabs. Definitely, there are quite a few cases. But if we want to change the reality, yes, we are going to do peace with people that were our enemies. I mean, you cannot do peace with the Finnish people or with the Swedish. We need to do peace with the neighbors here, and to make from those enemies, to make peace with those enemies. That's a fact. At a certain moment, they were interested to kill us, and some of them are still willing and fully motivated to do it. And that's one of our challenges when we try to change the reality. We need to change the reality in a way that those people will not be motivated to do it. They will feel comfortable and will say to themselves, it's not worth fighting. So it's changing reality. But yes, when I speak with the with people from the right wing, that's the criticism I hear. You are naive. You forget about it. That all the Arabs want to kill us. Blah blah blah. Yes, that's exactly what I hear. That's part of my reality, day-to-day reality.
I think the key thing that we have to, in order to answer your question, Anna, the word that we need to say and to understand is trust. We need to build trust, and building trust takes time. Like Sefi said, it's a process. We're not going to make peace tomorrow. We're going to make it. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of bridges that need to be built. And that's what we're trying to do. And the more people will realize that we can build these bridges, build this connection, build this trust, then it will be easier to one day make a scene like the Berlin Wall and break the wall and feel safe. But
Yeah, that took a lot of years, but it's still happening.
yeah, but it will take time. It's trust. Trust is not built in one day, not in 2 days. It takes a lot of time. There's a culture that needs to be changed. It's hard to change cultures. It takes time. It takes education, and basically, I think the most important thing is it takes a lot of patience. We need to be patient, and we need to continue, like Sefi said, in this marathon.
Yeah, and I have to remind also that it's very popular, very common that people say on both sides, they say the same. There is no partner. In Hebrew, they say ein partner. Everyone thinks that there is no partner in the other side. So when you believe that there is no partner, then the next step is, okay, no chance for peace. We need just to manage the conflict, etc. So we are trying to convince people that in some circumstances there is a partner, and we need to work hard, and at a certain moment we will see that there is a partner, and the other side will see that also there is a partner, and then hopefully we can find a way to live together and to with respect and freedom of movement everywhere, etc. I'm not sure about borders, how we can do it. As I said before,
Borders, we can give people both IDs, maybe. That's how I go through. I have 3 passports: Israeli,
Wow.
Palestinian, and Jordanian. So I have no problem going everywhere. So maybe people can have both IDs or something.
I really hope that we will achieve a peace that will include open borders, because to create long fences all over, it will not be easy, and the holy places, so many sensitive places in this territory. So I really hope that we will be able to achieve a peace of open borders. For open borders, you really need to go through a
the Americans who I brought to Nablus, when we entered Nablus, about like 10 minutes after we entered, we wanted to go to Joseph's tomb, where the prophet Joseph is believed to have been buried. And like just when we got there, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we have police coming. They somehow knew that we got in, and maybe it's the Israeli side or something that told them, and they wanted to see if we are not lost, if we didn't get there. They thought they were settlers or something like that, or Israelis who got accidentally entered, because sometimes maybe ways can take you there or something like that. And we explained that we're just showing them around, tourism or something like that. Yeah. Oh, and we also went to the old city of Nablus, and these people, like the ones that I was with, Americans, they obviously look not Palestinian, and they are also journalists. So apparently, I think one guy, luckily we had a Palestinian with us. So there was this one guy who told him, "Can you come for a second?" And he took him like 2 minutes or 3 minutes of like, "Who are they? Are you sure they're not IDF? Or something like that, because they might be undercover or something like that." And he explained to them that everything's okay. So it was not easy to go there, especially these times where Corona, people don't expect tourists, So.
Yeah.
Daniel asks, I heard the current government of Israel has allowed Palestinians to build in Area C. Can you confirm this?
Yes, I can confirm it. It was recently a decision made by the Minister of Defense, Benny Gantz, which is definitely a great step. At the same time, he also authorizes quite a large number of buildings in the settlements. But even though I'm still happy that after quite a few years, they allowed about 1,000 flats to be built in the Palestinian area, in Zone C, which is it's an excitement. So we have some ground for optimism now with the new government. We have the Islamic Party of Mansour Abbas for the first time in the history, such a party in the coalition. And we have the Labour Party and Meretz. So we have a few reasons for optimism. Of course, nothing to be sure about. Also, us with our ideas about education. The Minister of Education now, Yifat Shasha Bitton, she is a PhD for education. Believe it or not, her PhD 18 years ago was about the influence of studying two narratives. How does it influence the ideas of the youth? Wow. And it's just it's exactly where we are discussing. So for me, to meet her and try to convince her to start bringing what we're doing to the system would be a great challenge. She's part of a right-wing party now, but still, we know exactly where she comes from. So if we have a chance to meet her, we will be able to remind her some of her testimonials, some of her words, some of the sentences she wrote. So hopefully we can convince her to move in the right direction. And I remember you spoke a few minutes ago about the education system. I agree. It doesn't start at the age of 15. if you can start educating people in the right direction, younger ages, yes, that would be great. But we need to invest resources, and we need to do it in parallel in both sides. Not easy, but it's definitely worth the effort and worth trying. So we are now building a program for the 6th grade, for 10th grade, age 15, 16. But one day, hopefully, they will teach peace studies all through. I mean, teaching peace means that whenever you teach the youngsters about the Israeli Holocaust and the Independence Day, that's where you start teaching them about our history. Don't wait to the age of 15 to start planting in their heads new ideas and better ideas and
Yeah, I mean, there is so much we can do as two nations. Like if we save time and just be friends, there's so much we can do. There's so much technologies and science and things that we can discover and focus on instead of just just focusing on fixing our conflicts. Imagine what we can do with just combining our powers. Because I studied with Palestinians. There are brilliant minds, really, and brilliant engineers and doctors. I just wish, this kind of mix, we would create maybe the new, Elon Musk's or something like that.
Yeah, and of course, what makes things even more complexity is the fact that we have Palestinians living in Israel. We have the Arabs living in Israel. They are also Palestinians, and once we reach reconciliation with the Palestinians in the West Bank, we should also find a solution that will also create peace inside here with the Palestinians living here. They have also some demands. I know people living in al-Fahim, they hope to come back to their houses in other places, some ruins. They go to ruins of some villages that were built until they were there until 48, and now they were ruined. They want hopefully to build these places back. We have some challenges inside here as well. So peace with the West Bank Palestinians is not enough. We should also find a way to reach reconciliation with the Palestinians living in Israel. It's part of the process.
So Sefi,
they could be the bridge. They could do, if we reach with them reconciliation, they can help us reach an agreement with the Palestinians in the West Bank.
Sefi, I have a question for you. So we have someone in the comments who's saying that the whole Palestinian narrative is based on lies and that they won't even admit the temple stood in Jerusalem. And I wanted to go back to that because I think all of us here think that's not totally true. And maybe to kind of push back, what are some of the lies or misinformation that you see in the Israeli narrative that we get?
In the Israeli narrative, we always believed that we were very few against many. And recently I heard that the Israeli army in 1948 was quite strong, especially 2-3 weeks after the establishment of the state. We had already quite a lot of power. And the Arab armies at that time, they were not strong. So we were not so few against many. That's some narrative that I recently learned that is not 100% correct. And I think the narrative about, not a lot of Israelis know that we did not allow them to come back. In July or August and November 48, Arabs wanted to go back to their hometown, and we didn't allow them. A lot of Jews don't know it. So those are some examples, but also in the Palestinian narrative, yes, that's correct. They don't know that we have our roots here. They have no idea that the Jews were here 2,000 years ago. I mean, you have enough evidence that the Jews were here. It's not just the history books. You have archaeology sites, and it's really clear that we were here. And for many years, the Jews were praying every Pesach, in Leila Seder, in the Pesach ceremony, Easter ceremony, next year in
בשנה
Jerusalem.
הבאה בירושלים.
Yeah, next year in the built Jerusalem. So many Arabs, many Palestinians really don't know it. They don't know that we prayed for so many years to come back to Zion, to Israel. So yeah,
You're right, and they don't know it because simply they were not taught, or they just
It's so,
you know,
And
and also they don't search for these things. So.
I can
it's
add
so
to
funny
that.
to me because sorry, I'll let you talk.
Because there's a I don't know if it's part of the Israeli narrative, but it is an Israeli myth that we grew up on, that we came to we were a nation without we needed
nation without the land coming to a
for
land
For a land without
for a
a
land
nation.
without a nation, yeah. And that's the big myth that at least I remember my generation grew up on, that we just came here and there was few people here, and basically there was nobody here.
Yeah, that's why Palestinians take it as an offense when you say that
Yeah.
to them. You know.
Yeah, and that's a big myth.
Another problem with Israelis, a lot of Israelis don't understand why the Palestinians living here, they have feelings and they support the Palestinians in the West Bank. It's because that's their families, it's their relatives. A lot of Israelis, they really don't know that an Arab in Nazareth, maybe he has a relative in Nablus, or someone else living in Sakhnin, he has relatives in Damascus or in Lebanon, in Beirut or so. So it's the same nation. It's the cousins. You know, I know people that after 48 they were just split and they couldn't see their relatives for years. The only way for them to meet their relatives was to fly to Cyprus or Turkey and to meet. You know, somebody will fly from Tel Aviv to Cyprus, and his relative will fly from Beirut to Cyprus, and that was their way to meet. Perhaps they were living 20 miles or 30 miles from each other, but the way to meet was to fly to a third country and to meet there. And yeah, and that's part of their life. And a lot of people in Israel don't understand how difficult it is for the Palestinians here to be, on one hand, Israeli citizens with an Israeli passport, etc., but still be part of the Palestinian nation, still have a lot of feelings to the wishes and to the beliefs of the Palestinians living in the West Bank and so on. So and also with Gaza, you know, I know people in Israel, Arabs in Israel, they have relatives in Gaza. And we see Gaza as the extremists, the Hamas, but the civilians living in Gaza, they are not extremists. They are poor people with authorities that do not allow them to demonstrate. You can't do anything. You just need to take care of your life and to be very careful and hope for better days one day.
Amazing. All right. So we are just about the end of our episode here, and we would like to really thank you, Nir and Sefi. It was absolute pleasure. I think you guys are making a really important step that many people, like, you know, they don't have maybe the courage to do, because even for Israelis, you know, peace activists can be, you know, criticized. You know what I mean? So I would really love to invite you again to Mount Gerizim. We have a place here called like a center called Samaritan International Peace Center, where we really bring both sides to come and sit and even eat together, because I think like eating together is a huge part of, like, you know, bonding between two people and two nations.
I'm sensing the Trina plug.
We love tahini here, exactly. Sefi, maybe you know our tahini. It looks like this.
Yeah, but Barake.
Har Bracha. Well, Barake is another band. No, focus on Har Bracha. So, all right, that was a really nice episode. Thank you, everyone. If you have anything else to say, please go ahead.
No, it was a pleasure. It was so interesting, and thank you thank you so much for spending the time with us. And yeah, we look forward to being in contact again and
Sure.
keeping the contact with you. And hopefully, I'll speak with a few of my colleagues and offer them to come and join you in the near future. And I'll be happy to listen. And you are doing a great job in your activity. I looked at some of the
Thank you.
episodes, past episodes, and I wish you all the best in the near
Thank you.
future.
Yeah, it's just the beginning. And it's a long journey, but you know,
Yeah. Baby steps,
it's not-
baby steps, baby
nothing is
steps.
supposed to be easy, as they say.
Yeah, as the Carpenters said, we've only just begun.
We've
Yeah.
only just begun. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you have an amazing night or day, whatever you are in this beautiful world. Please don't forget to leave a like, leave a sub, share it with your friends, and also support us on Patreon if you want to support our cause. And hope to see you in the next episode on the Up in Peace podcast. See you later.